painting a huge picture against crypto. White House keeps doing it and is literally trying to tank the economy.
What is the motivate? I don't get how it benefits them. Like, obviously, if they're gonna come out, specifically the Democratic Party, like it's mostly the Democrats, which is bizarre to me. What is the motivating factor?
I have no clue. I think they can just paint a very satisfying picture that, there's not enough people that are pro crypto or big enough into crypto that they can just kind of say, hey, we can paint them as the bad guys and avoid some of these other more serious discussions about the causes of inflation and the harm in the US economy and the negative things that are going in the US economy.
So you're saying it's an easy distraction from other problems in the market?
Yeah, I mean it's also easier to talk about blaming wealthy crypto traders or North Korea or El Salvador being a national security threat because they use Bitcoin than talk about having to cut spending on the military or other programs. And by basically putting it in those two things in direct opposition, maybe not military spending, but food assistance programs, they're saying, Republicans want to cut food assistance programs as part of the U.S. debt ceiling negotiation. Well, we want to go after wealthy crypto investors who are avoiding taxes. And we were trying to attack crypto because North Korea is using it to fund their half their missile program. So we're trying to protect you. The Republicans are trying to take things away from you and hurt the poor.
I mean, which is the normal. I mean, that's the normal playbook, right? And we've seen that since I started being a zygote voter in 1998 or whatever it was.
What does that mean? Can you break that down? A zygote voter? I don't know if I've heard that.
A zygote is like when a baby is formed in the womb, Jarrett.
I was like, that's genetics talk right there.
It's like when they're a multicellular organism, and I think it's just before they have a heart. Meaning, in the earliest gestation of my life as a voter, when I was a baby voter, is what is basically the extreme.
When
I was like
voting
what?
before I existed.
Yeah,
Before you were a zygote.
When I was a zygote voter, basically, as long as I can fathom or remember, this has been the playbook of go with us, we're protecting you. And don't go with them because they're taking things away, and it just wraps itself in the current narrative of the pain where it hurts, But is it really hurting? Like, are retail traders hurting?
They're not talking to retail traders. They're blaming retail traders. They're blaming us for pain in the economy and inflation, essentially, and the reason why the U.S. debt ceiling. And you've got so much debt, apparently.
Boom, there's our guy, Roger Williams. He says, what's up? What's up, man? So, like, what you're saying is what I never understood about this narrative, and I don't care if it's Democrats or Republicans, but when they say, we're going to go after this industry, and in this case, it's crypto. And before, it was the bankers. The bankers were the target in 2008, right? We're going to go after this industry. And it was really the shadow banking, meaning, these funds that effectively operated as their own bank of sorts because they were lending out and going nuts. And shadow banking is not my term, and it's not a conspiracy term. It was a term from The Big Short, basically. These shadow banking groups. Basically, it was like even bigger than the banking system, so they were going after them. And now the bank's like, there's some other whipping boy. There's some other whipping boy in the house now, and it's not us, and it's crypto. And so that's the current whipping boy. But what I never got is if the retail traders are the problem, why is there never a dialogue about crackdown from the White House on the financial literacy of retail traders? Why is that never the target? Why don't they go after me? Why don't they go after Wall Street bets? Did they go after Wall Street bets? Like, why aren't those people ever the target instead of a technology?
Yeah, I don't think crypto's seen as a technology, though.
No.
Crypto's not seen as a technology. It's seen as like a subculture that is devious and trying to disrupt everything and just destroy things. And I think Aussie's got a really good analysis here, because it's basically just putting up like a what's the false
False dichotomy.
it's a false dichotomy, but it's what's the argument? It's a straw man, right?
Straw
It,
man.
it doesn't actually exist, but they're using it to make something seem like it exists. So it's like a false dichotomy, but it's really a straw man. And by using crypto, no one understands crypto. I said this the other day on an internal call at Mercy Corp, but I'm like, 3 to 4% of the people on the planet own it. Of those people, the amount of people that talk about it daily, probably less than 1% of that amount of people. So no one really understands it. The White House hasn't done a good job of trying to understand tech. And so they can just use this and say, oh, and we broke the numbers down. Let's say that somehow 10 to 20 to 30 billion dollars is stolen every year from crypto traders that don't pay their taxes. Then
It's crypto wash trading. They've gotten more specific now. It's the
so
30-day
even
crypto
crypto wash
trading.
trading, even crypto wash trading, the amount of people that are in crypto that actually do crypto wash trading is still a small percent. That doesn't mean that it's not a large amount of money, but it just seems so insignificant. And like, they're the ones that added on $1.31 trillion of debt because they had to have a military budget of like $800 billion, right? It's ridiculous. So to blame it on crypto
and this is the highest. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is our highest military spending budget of all time.
Every year it's of all time because of inflation. They just spend more.
Well, and not just inflation, though. It's not just inflation. And this is what bothers me. They're talking about cutting the food programs, or one candidate said they would cut the Department of Education, something like this, on the Republican side. And it was obviously nuts. But it's like, we often hear, well, maybe we need to cut this to make more room in the budget. And it's like, if we can spend $850 million on the military, and how much of that how much of that can end up, how much does end up in black budgets, right? That just like, we're not really sure what happened. Like, how much could it take to solve universal health care in America?
God, I don't think we spend that much on universal healthcare in Canada.
No. Well, you do have how many people you have in Canada? Population?
Like 36 million.
Okay, we're closer to 350 million, bro.
Yeah, you guys are like 10x.
Calm down, Aussie. Calm down.
You're getting a little ambitious there, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. This is the other thing I was thinking about this, though, and you made a valid point. I don't remember, Jared, if it was you or if it was you, Aussie, that just made this point. But I think I think it's very good. I remember the revelation I had when W announced a war on terror. Now, mind you, at the time, in my young 20s, I was in the church, and so by default, I was Christian, and by default, I was Republican. And I didn't have a lot of thinking behind it. It was just what my local culture was pulling me into. But I had this stark cognitive dissonance when George W. Announced the war on terror, because I knew at the time our tax code only allows income tax when we're in war. And people don't realize this. Technically, income tax was first launched in America around wartime. And we canceled income tax at one point. There was like World War I, I think it was. And then we did away with income tax. And then we were into World War II. And then if you notice, we've been in a theater of war every year since. And they have to justify the theater of war because they have to justify the income tax. And then that kind of went away. And now income tax is just with us for life. And then we went into the war on terror. And here's what scared me about this. Define terrorism in America. It's ambiguous. You're a homeland terrorist. You're a foreign terrorist. This is a terrorist group, and it's very subjective. And then terrorism was an idea, not an actual group. So we didn't declare war on anything, and we declared war on a concept. And to whoever just made this point, it was ambiguous enough to never be defined, so you could never refute it. And this is where crypto is at. They're staying in the zone of making it undefined and ambiguous enough to always punch at the punching bag. And it's currently this bogeyman that we can pin, every sin of the village on. And meanwhile, there's very defined problems like the highest military budget, not just because of inflation, but because it's ridiculously high. I mean, it's ridiculously high. So what next, though? I mean, what's next for crypto? We're looking at the next Fed meeting not having a federal funds raise. Are we thinking
very likely over 80% likelihood that we
80% likelihood.
that we see no raise at the next Fed meeting, especially
So
after his comments on Friday.
so let's live in the world where that doesn't happen. Okay, let's assume that's not going to happen. Right now, Ozzy's saying 4 out of 5. It's not going to happen. We'll look back if it doesn't happen. Assuming it doesn't happen, we will look back in 10 years, and you'll be like, "Oh yeah, that was the canary in the coal mine to the end of the U.S. dollar." Because the rest of the world,
wait, what?
yeah, listen, because the rest of the world is already starting to move away from the dollar. They've seen that we're just going to print the dollar into oblivion, hold other countries, hold other countries to their
Hostage.
debts. Yeah, to their debts, while we just basically print more money to pay off our own debts, and we can always print more money. And other countries are already starting to move away from the dollar and buy commodities around the globe, not using the petrodollar anymore. So if we fail to do this, I think it's like the first time since, bring up the stat, somebody, I think it's like 1879. It'll be the first time in more than 100 years where this just hasn't worked out. And it's just going to be really bad. It's just going to be another thing that other countries are going to look at us and be like, they don't have their game together.
Time out. Did I say raise the debt ceiling or raise the federal funds rate?
You said raise the federal funds rate.
So are you talking about the debt ceiling?
Sorry, I'm talking about the debt ceiling now.
Well, then
I
let's
heard
stay
debt
on
ceiling.
that because this is important. Okay, now that I know that you're talking about the debt ceiling, continue. I apologize. I was just like, wait, what is he talking about? Okay.
Sorry, the debt ceiling. I was talking about the debt ceiling. I don't know.
Please continue.
Go.
No, that's just the point. If we don't figure this out internally, I don't see how other countries are going to start to take us seriously.
Okay, your own banking system isn't taking you seriously right now.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
BlackRock is advising Circle to buy repo and buy other forms of
I just saw
US
this headline.
dollar
What
backing.
is repo? For the average person, what is repo?
I don't even know. All I know is it's not the US.
It's
not US. It's not US Treasuries, and they've only advised them to buy US Treasuries up until this point. And so, by the fact, literally right now, if you look at the US Circle, like USDC Reserve Fund, it's in US Treasuries dated up until May 31st, and now they're buying repo essentially as a hedge against the fact that the US does not pay on their debts. And
repo,
this isn't
repo definition. A repurchase agreement, which we know, like, hey, you repo a car, you're repurchasing or you're taking it back. But this, in the government context, is a form of short-term borrowing for dealers in government securities. And I don't know how this relates to treasuries, but treasuries, in theory, are longer-term bets. They're usually in 10 to 20-year bets, right? And so it sounds like a repo is a short-term at a slightly higher price. And so BlackRock making this case. So finish your thought here now that we have a working definition of repos versus treasuries.
So we're looking at this. They're not holding anything past May 31st in terms of treasuries, and now they're also buying repos. And so
interesting.
BlackRock, who is the advisor for Circle, BlackRock is one of, if not one of the biggest manager of funds within the US. So if they're losing faith in the fact that the US is going to raise the debt ceiling and pay down on their bonds, why would anyone else, any other country, believe in the US dollar? Your own banking system, your own investment community, your bank, like your own everything is actually not believing in the US right now and is actively advising against investing in US and the US debt system.
Why can Biden what do we think the White House or the government, let's extrapolate beyond Democrats, beyond Biden. Why would they be futzing around, messing around, saying we're going to raise the debt ceiling, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling? Shame on us for overgoing our debts, but whatever, we're the American government, we can print what we want. Why would someone like Biden be so confident to play chicken with terms like these crypto terms if it were that dire?
He knows that the Congress will be forced to work together and come up with a solution, because if they don't, they're going to look like absolute fools, even though they already look like fools. So they're going to look like bigger fools if they can't work together and figure it out.
And Jared, you think that this will accelerate the de-dollarization if we default?
Yeah, if we default, yes. That's what and this is not just my opinion. This is like, if you turn on the news and listen at night on CNN, on Fox, on MSNBC, on CNBC, it's just going to make us look like we're really falling apart. I mean, so let's step to the other side of the world. You're pegged to the US dollar, and you're looking at the United States, and you're like, do we really want to do this? Other people are jumping out the digital yuan. Other people are looking into whether the digital euro is going to happen. Other people are just trying to figure out a different play. The U.S. is so messed up; they can't even figure out if they're going to get their own debt ceiling together because of internal politics. As Aussie just pointed out, their own internal banking system is so crap because the guy who pulls the levers decided to pump rates basically from 0 all the way to 5, whatever it is now, in 14 months. Knowing that many of the banks had bought 30-year treasuries at 1.5%. So when he went to 5%, they were in realized loss. I mean, if you're looking at the United States like a lemonade stand, it's not run well. So why would I want to continue to play ball with that? Especially if I'm tied to that. Like most countries, especially in Latin America, are all tied. We're all pegged to the dollar, or we're dollarized.
Well, Venezuela has just said that they're not doing economic transactions in the U.S. dollar anymore.
Who?
Venezuela.
OPEC.
I mean that doesn't surprise us.
That's not surprising, but it's another country moving away. We've got Iraq, also not surprising, but has moved away from the U.S. dollar, and that's just adding to the list of people that are walking away. And just to add to this pile of garbage, this pile of stinking garbage. Yellen, your good old financial bank manager here, is saying more bank mergers are likely in the U.S. And she said that this week.
Yeah, which is code for more bank failures are likely.
Yeah, essentially, it's
we need to do her meme coin. I'm telling you,
it's essentially saying we know that there's a bunch of banks that are screwed, and so we're not going to call them bank failures. We're just going to preemptively announce bank mergers of all these small regional banks that are way too underwater, and we're going to
and that assumes bailouts, right?
Well, essentially, she's trying to avoid having to use the word bailout. She's basically preemptively calling them mergers rather than bailouts.
So we could probably spend the next 40 minutes going through this because there's just a bunch to unravel. But the story in my head is people don't tune in to hear our political views about whether Joe Biden and the Dems and the Republicans are going to get together. So I want to flip it a little bit and ask you guys, because Grant and I spoke a little bit yesterday about investing long term and what our thoughts are. Maybe I'll call up Brian's and then I'll pivot a little bit. Brian Nott says it's all kabuki. The social contract was broken a long time ago, and let's face it, it's why Bitcoin was invented in the first place. Brian, you can read my mind because I'm going right to Bitcoin. So yesterday, Grant and I had a conversation about investing and what we're doing and our risk tolerance and our underlying assumptions and some game theory. Yep. And we were talking about buying Bitcoin versus maybe investing right now to get your cash flow, all these things. I'm glad Brian brought that up because I do think the social contract was broke in 2008 when the banks basically said, give us $700 billion or you're going to have a problem. And the government basically folded, didn't even know what cards they had. The government bailed them out with U.S. tax dollars. And then they, were able to pay off all their C-suite with bonuses. Yes. And the people that were hurt were Main Street, not Wall Street. This is the foundation of Bitcoin. Looking at Bitcoin, Grant, when you start to hear this stuff, and if you live in a world of de-dollarization, and Aussie, you too, is you're not on the dollar and you watch us, you're Southern neighbors, and we're basically just like a bunch of drunk hillbillies.
America is the Florida to Canada.
Exactly. It's the Florida, New Jersey to Canada. So you're looking down and you're seeing this house party. It's getting out of control, right? Yellen's, they're just printing money out the windows. Does this start to build the picture, Grant, for you to see why other countries maybe are going to go to a Bitcoin reserve as far as their treasury, are going to start to say, well, okay, so if we can't hold the dollar, what's the next best thing? Are we saying it's gold? Are we saying, what is it?
BRICS.
Bricks.
What?
Bricks and the XRP dollar.
I literally believe, and we share a low key contact who says you have to be paying attention to bricks. I think you were basically getting at Bitcoin, and what's the key?
Yeah, I'm getting a Bitcoin. Sure.
I want to do honor to that conversation, so I won't go down the bricks rabbit hole because I know 100% Aussie will in just a second. Did you see him lean into the mic? He was like,
We're trying to get Aussie to be closer to the mic, but you can tell when he's back, he's bored. And when he's close, he's like, listen, this is Dan Rather.
This is Dan Rather. So, but I want to do respect to the Bitcoin thing. Whether it's an individual investor, and for those who are watching our conversation, I expressed a concern about some game theory for Jared. I'm like, Jared is a true maxi. He puts his money where his mouth is, and he lives by the code. He says, I'm gonna do this, and he does it. And so his investments are growing in that world, targeting a mid-2025 date, and hopefully there's some payoff there and grow beyond that with Bitcoin investments as his dominant, not only, but dominant investment strategy. And my concern is a cash flow maxi. If anything, I'm an opportunist and a cash flow maxi. And so I asked him, I said, do you ever think about what if this doesn't work? Not to sow doubt, but I am sincerely curious, like, what if Bitcoin's only at 30? What if Bitcoin's only at 15 by then? And he had a good answer. But now we're extrapolating that same dialogue at a country level and going, is this starting to make the case? Because in Grant's world, maybe real estate makes sense, but like countries don't have that version when they've been depending on the US. The US dollar was a country's version of real estate, right? Like it was guaranteed. They had a fixed position in the market. There were so many things they could do with it and so many derivatives they could pull. And they were Katie by the door, as we say in old school vernacular. And now it's going away. So does that then say, well, let's go to the second option. That's Bitcoin. It's not gold. It's not silver. Is it Bitcoin? It could be, but I think because of Bitcoin's what we call feature, no one can control it except by market movers, market makers. Because we think that's a feature, those in control see that as a bug. And because of that, because they cannot control it and influence it with the tools they're used to using, they can. If they own a big enough chunk and move the market, they can. I think they're going to look towards the next underdog. And I think they're also scared of China. I think most people are scared of China. So when they think of BRICS, the fact that BRICS is smaller, scrappy, coming up with its own digital currency, coming up with its own coming up with its own currency, period. And it's an economic force. It includes China, but it's not only China. It includes Russia, who's a little scary, but it's not only Russia. And so it's almost like a portfolio that has a few risky components, but because it's a little diversified, especially with India and Brazil, it seems a little less risky, and it's an economic powerhouse. So it seems a bit safer, and they have something to prove. So for me, I would say that we're going to start to see major headlines about thus and so investing heavily in BRICS, or thus and so a meeting at the BRICS summit. Now, that's my kind of position, but Aussie, you've been patient enough. What are your thoughts?
See, I'm actually going to turn back towards what Jarrett was trying to get us to talk about in Bitcoin for a second before I bite on your great BRICS feeder line there. Some companies that are like US dollar collateralized, quote unquote, because no one fully knows what Tether is collateralized with. But for anyone who's a Bitcoin maxi or very bullish, wants to be super bullish on Bitcoin in the long term, Tether's going to be buying with 15% of their profits every quarter, going to be buying Bitcoin. And
that's news.
That's massive news. If we were in a bull market, that would have just shot Bitcoin up $10,000.
What?
That's because think about this. They made $1.5 billion in Q1 of 2023.
Revenue.
Profit.
Really? Shit.
Yeah. Profit.
What?
So that means they're buying 150 million in Q1 of Bitcoin. Sorry,
minimum.
more.
Yeah,
200.
something like 225
225, yeah.
million.
So that means
million.
in a year at 1.5 billion, they're they're getting close to buying
That's
almost $1 billion in Bitcoin.
That's 8,300 Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a good amount. That's a pretty penny.
And most are seeing this as their move to basically collateralize themselves outside of U.S. Treasuries and commercial debt. And
So tilting their portfolio, basically rebalancing their portfolio,
taking away the U.S. dollar risk and backing themselves with an asset that, no outside government can control. No one can no one can manipulate Bitcoin necessarily. And
but you're talking about a private company. And if Jared had asked the question, is this making the Bitcoin case for private companies or multinationals? I probably would have been more prone to go your direction and say, yes, absolutely. But you asked the question about governments.
And so what I'm teeing up is we're seeing private companies make this move. And we've already seen governments make this move. We've seen El Salvador make this move. It's not a big country. It's a small country, and it's only a portion of their reserves, but it's still a move. So now that we're seeing Tether make this move, and we're seeing this conversation with USDC in Circle, we're likely to start maybe seeing that conversation start popping up in smaller countries again, and in more small countries, because their risk appetite might be a little bit better because they think, well, either I get stuck with this crazy IMF bailout, which Pakistan is right now negotiating and is having to ban crypto because of, or I'm going to start backing myself with this asset that is essentially like digital gold in some ways.
Good enough for BlackRock, good enough for El Sal, good enough for whoever. Tether,
So,
good enough for me. Interesting.
and so
Yeah,
that's my Bitcoin case. I think there is a really strong BRICS case as well. And so we can dive into that. But I'm going to let our Maxi talk for a second because I can see he's chomping at the bit.
is your mic or is that my headphones, Aussie?
No,
Aussie,
I heard the same thing.
Yeah,
Something.
your mic was fluttering.
Yeah. It's okay.
But I'll let you troubleshoot that for a sec. I think BRICS is an interesting thing. I just think whenever you have China in the room, like you have those 5 nations, and when you have China and Russia at the same King Arthur's table, it's just not going to work. They're both looking for long-term world dominance, or at least regional dominance. And so like China and Russia will play well as long as the US are on the other side of the equation. But if the US weren't in the equation, then China and Russia would be at it. There's no doubt about that. China, I don't think is long-term trying to play nice with anyone because they don't have to, because they have so much production in the world. And I don't think that any currency that is tied to that conglomerate of countries long term is going to work because of that, because of just the geopolitical power struggle that Beijing's always going to try to push. And that's just how that goes. Now, Russia does have its oil. Like if Russia doesn't have oil, it doesn't matter. I know that they have nukes, but like if they don't have oil and they can't hold 50% of, Eastern Europe in trouble every winter, it doesn't matter. Like Europe is like oil is so important still in our world. Yeah. That's why Venezuela was at all relevant. If Saudi Arabia doesn't have oil, then what? Cool. You got some sand. Like no one cares, and that's why the US is like very adamantly over the last 15 years been trying to get all their oil going, getting gas going. So I guess my point is like long term, I don't think that I'm not worried about BRICS. I think long term, the money, like money and economic energy should go back. Would be better to go back to something that's more of a commodity that no one necessarily owns, but certain amount of people can control. And that's how it was. And then you can layer on top of that a fiat system, basically. Like, I still think the hybrid system is where we're going to go. It's going to be a US dollar CBDC, and on top of that, and on the bottom of that is Bitcoin. And if you want to take loans out in CBDC, you have to have a certain amount of Bitcoin. They can see it on chain. There's going to be some really fun mechanisms. That's just how it's going to be. But I don't buy the BRICS thing long term, just because I know how Beijing is just they're not going to kowtow to anyone. And also, like, Putin eventually will die, and then the entire Russian regime could change. But like the way Beijing is currently set up, it's not going to get any better. Like they're on, they're thinking 100 years down the road. So
I think BRICS will come together for one purpose alone: to unseat the U.S. dollar. And I agree with you about the long term, but what we're talking about is what's going to happen with crypto around these major events around the U.S. dollar. We can't really talk about crypto without talking about the U.S. dollar, really. But
Bloomberg literally said if the U.S. defaults on their debt, crypto is going to collapse. Bloomberg loves their clickbait headlines.
Do you think what's the correlation there? To do love towards the fact that we are the not crypto bros, like what is? Let's look at both scenarios. We miss the debt ceiling. What happens to crypto? We meet the debt ceiling. We raise the debt ceiling. What happens to crypto?
Okay, we missed the debt ceiling. Potentially, Tether holds U.S. Treasuries past May 31st. U.S. Tether becomes depegged because there is not enough backing supply. People can't redeem their Tether. Tether crashes. Most of the value within crypto is, at least compared to Tether and USD Tether, and most stable coins are held as Tether. And so,
Jared, you look confused.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything to do with that, but I'm keep talking, Aussie, because I want you to convince me. I don't think Tether, if Tether like dissolved, I don't think it would cause a problem, but I just want to make sure that I'm opening up. I mean, Tether has $82 billion of market cap, but USDC has $30 billion of market cap. USDC used to be way higher than Tether, so I don't really think there's any allegiance between Tether, USDC, or other like big stable coins. I mean, Gemini used to be up there; they're not up there anymore.
I don't think he's talking about the value of Tether in coin market cap. When you see the 27.7, that is not against the US dollar, that's against Tether. So it's when you look at it's basically an oracle like Chainlink. And so if you lose track of the oracle, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Aussie, if the oracle depegs, it's not that the value suddenly against the US dollar goes down. It's you're seeing a 27.5 Bitcoin coin market cap. 27.5 Bitcoin suddenly is tanking along with Tether because Tether is the mechanisms that's reporting on places like coin market cap. That's the actual value. And it's supposed to be pegged, but if you watch when Tether depegs even by like a fraction of a penny, you'll see Bitcoin drop by that amount. So, Aussie, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like you kind of see
not the reserve of Bitcoin, and if we lose it, you're right. Circle or USDC, they hold more value in the market. But when you see the pricing of nearly all the cryptos, they're quoting the Tether price.
And most crypto on exchanges is traded in Tether, and most crypto is still traded on exchange. Your ability to get to fiat from crypto is largely dependent on Tether.
It's like its own underlying on-ramp of sorts, because this is why in Q1 they have $1 billion in revenue, because nearly all of
$1 billion in profits.
In profit, because nearly all of these transactions are actually cycling with Tether first. And so now, let's say you have Coinbase in every on-ramp, but you suddenly don't have the perceived liquid capital of Tether. That goes away. They're going to have to replace it with USDC or some other mechanism, but it's going to take a minute to do that. So it's not that it's the market has suddenly lost that value. It's we've lost the mechanisms of even measuring it. And when that's gone, faith is gone, and then it's spiral. There's a death spiral. is what goes on there.
Yeah, exactly. You've
Yeah, Jared's
summarized
like,
it.
I still don't buy it. Jared's like, no.
I don't buy any of that, but I'll let that happen. I mean, I just don't buy any of it. But if it happens,
Well,
Really?
I
it's
will
like
come
UST.
on here and say I'm
It's
wrong.
like Luna and UST. Like Luna, like anything that was measured against Luna, like there was a huge death spiral that happened. And yes, there was like algorithm stuff that happened with it, but there's a death spiral when people are like, oh my God. Because exchanges will have to start saying you can't withdraw to your bank account. You physically cannot withdraw to your bank account because we cannot redeem the tether that you need to redeem in order to send fiat to your bank account. Because USDT would need to be burned, but they don't have the reserves to pay out what needs to be burned in order to pay into your bank account in an ACH transfer. And so because people, and then that starts causing a whole loop, because people are going to be like, well, they can't. It would also mean getting money on, like people are like, you're going to lose buying interest because people are like, well, what if I can't get my money off? What if I can't get fiat? And it starts a really, really big fear mongering cycle.
So what has to happen for that to happen? What has to happen to Tether?
Essentially, what would need to happen is the US defaults on their debt, and Tether is holding treasuries that are dated past May 31st or June 7th, depending on whatever date you're working on as the X date.
Just explain to me how it happens, because I'm still super skeptical of everything that's just been said here. I buy zero of it, honestly.
Okay, so Tether is at least presumably, if they're backed at all similarly to Circle, they hold U.S. Treasuries,
Right.
which they use, which they can redeem to pay you and I back to buy back USDT when we want to off ramp our USDT into our bank accounts.
Got you.
If the US fails to pay down on their debt in the debt ceiling, because they don't raise the debt ceiling, some of the bonds that Tether holds, which are post-dated the X date, those either become worthless or they aren't receiving the bond payouts in USD that they are expecting to. Therefore, their liquidity slowly drops. Or quickly drops because they don't have that liquidity that's supposed to be coming from these treasuries and the value of these treasuries. And therefore, when you and I want to redeem our USDT to our bank accounts, Tether doesn't have the money to pay out or
Got you. So
the backing price.
Yeah, and so they're in a liquidity crisis, right?
They come into a liquidity crisis because the U.S. government defaults on their debt. And
so I still don't understand how that leads Bitcoin to draw down. I think there's like, and I wish I had this number fresher in my head, but I heard it the other day. There's a massive, I think it's like 70+% of Bitcoin has been in cold storage now for more than a year, right? People are starting to understand that you're just going to hold this thing. So I don't see how, even if there's this crisis with the debt crisis and then it affects Tether, I don't see people pulling Bitcoin off their thing because they're just going to hold it. So I actually think, I guess I just don't see how Bitcoin crumbles in the scenario.
So Bitcoin, just because a bunch of it's been in cold storage, the market is impacted by what's on exchange and what's getting sold on exchange. So
every crash has happened and your statistic has still been in place. So like your statistic has been true on average for years, but we've still seen massive dips that respond to the liquid currency of Bitcoin.
Sure. I guess I just don't, even if Bitcoin goes down 70% from where it is today, it's not even under 20,000 and it already went down to 16,000. So I guess
if it drops 70% from today, it is
sorry. If it drops 30% is what I meant to say. If the 30% that's not on cold storage drops, it doesn't even crack 20,000, and it doesn't even, for me, register as anything.
Yes, it would draw. See, it all has to do with the liquidity. And so because the liquidity of Bitcoin, even if it's the 30% that's moving, that 30% can still drop the price way more than 30%. That 30% of Bitcoin that hasn't moved in a year is responsible.
70%. Yeah.
But yeah, the 70% of Bitcoin that hasn't moved in a year, that's not moved in a year, and we've still gone from 60 plus thousand to 16. So that 30% can still bring us from the 27 and a half that we are now down to, I'll go 15K
Sure.
just to be like, say we make double bottom, but
Well,
could
and
bring
if I
us
may,
down even
I
further.
think there's more of a UX component to this, Jarrett. I think some of the fear, like the real people who are afraid, you might even be referring to like intrinsic value. Like the intrinsic value of Bitcoin doesn't shift just because.
No. I'm not talking about the intrinsic value. I don't think. I'm not talking about one BTC equals one BTC, whether it's worth $1 in US or it's worth $10,000 billion, right? Like I'm talking about, I actually don't see how the price is impacted.
So check this out.
Yeah.
When you look at CoinMarketCap,
I'm looking at it right now because I'm trying to see this. It's in USDT. I don't see that, but I want to see that.
It's all compared in USDT. If you go on any exchange chart, it's in USDT. If you
And
go
so-
on TradingView, it's all USDT. If it's on CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, it's all compared to USDT.
and it's usually in the terms and conditions that it's a disclaimer that this is in USDT. And if you think about what Aussie's saying, let's say it depegs, and let's say there's loss of faith because of whatever mechanism in USDT.
Sure.
There's a moment when you're looking at 27,200 Bitcoin, and Tether has to real time report, well, I depegged, and I'm no longer 141 US. So even though the US dollar value of Bitcoin, for let's say we could go find an exchange that's displaying its prices in Dai-coin, a different stable coin, it's 1 for 1, and it's not depegging. That exchange will still show 27.7, or 27.2. But if Tether starts depegging, it represents more than 53% of all exchanges list their pricing in Tether alone. So a trader, all these traders, are going to be watching the Bitcoin price go 27, 25, 22, 23, and then starts locking in that price because they're going to start panic selling. And so that panic sell happens at this Tether price, which doesn't represent reality. It's literally just Tether that's diving. And so the fear is that there's a panic sell. And then when the panic sell happens, it's making the fear fact on the other exchanges. Because suddenly the real price, the Dai coin listed price, was at 27. But now the trades that are happening down at 22 because this was all based on an infrastructural flaw that nearly all this has been a complaint about Tether for years. This is why there was such an argument about confirming Tether's reserves. Because if Tether goes down, the fear panic sell and the loss in the marketplace, though not real, becomes real because the display number.
Yeah, the display number starts changing on the Tether, and then people start arbitraging between Tether and all of the other trading pairs.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just slowly, because it causes a mass volume of selling because people are arbing down the other liquidities.
Mm-hmm.
They might buy Tether, they might buy USDT Tether, Bitcoin, then go sell it, and then it causes this whole volume of selling, and there's not any ability to come buy. There's a loss of ability to buy in because you don't have 80% of your stable coins, which are in USDT, you don't have the ability to buy, and you can't really onboard because USDT, which is the main onboarding mechanism for most crypto dollars,
Can you explain that?
Most exchanges, when you bring USD onto the exchange,
Yeah,
they use your USD to mint USDT
in that moment.
in
Yes.
that moment. immediately.
Yes.
That's what that transaction is. It's not you bringing USD onto exchange. It's them taking your USD, sending it to Tether, and minting USDT.
Do Binance and Coinbase use USDT?
Yeah. Some of the, like, yeah, especially now that Paxos is gone.
Do you guys own USDT?
No, not really. I don't
I
know.
might have dust somewhere of USDT.
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah,
Because I own none. And because they could never, there was always that thing about them not being able to confirm their treasuries. I was just like, I'm staying far away from this. And I think Circle's a much better product as far as a stable coin. So I'm like, if this happens, I'm starting to understand how that could breed. But I guess I just don't see. I guess I think of the market long term, right? Like that could happen, and Bitcoin goes down to 12,000 in a month. It will be back up to 30,000, right?
Sure.
I think a lot of the calamities that have happened, even in the macro environment, like when the pandemic happened in March 15th, the world ended. Ides of March. By May 15th, the printing had already was on. Everyone was getting checks, and the Dow and everything was already almost back up to where it was pre-March 15th. So, I guess this is good.
I don't think it's the end of crypto.
No, I don't think it's the end of crypto. I think it's a massive. I don't think within a month it's back up. I think that is an oversimplification because huge portions of the market are based in the U.S. and you have to rebuild. You would have to rebuild your onboarding systems, and people would have to regain faith, and something like that would be pretty faith shakening. And maybe not the hardcore maxis like yourself, but a good section of retail traders. And so you kind of run into that issue.
That's my concern. You know how we were talking about like Florida politics? I grew up, when I think of Florida, I think of, coconut trees, surfing, warm winters, hotter summers. But when other people think of Florida, they think of our politics and our headlines. And we agreed on one call, like, that's not a good look. That's the level of my concern about this infrastructure. I'm not totally convinced Tether is going to take down crypto or permanently ding Bitcoin.
Yeah, no. Just the market. I don't think it's going to end it. It's going to take a lot to end crypto. I'm just saying the market. And I guess I sometimes feel like with Twitter being like somebody who's doing speed and they have the biggest ADHD case on the planet.
Yeah.
People just get so excited. And like, you guys call me a maxi here. The reality is I'm a crypto maxi. I'm a blockchain maxi. And I think that's where value should be stored.
Yeah.
You stole my line. That was like my big line from like 10 shows ago.
I'm only putting money in that. You guys know I'm not really looking at real estate. I did tell Grant if 2025 goes well, I will be getting real estate, but that's strictly just because I can basically write down depreciation to help out and attack taxes that way. But I guess it's just kind of like we're in such the depths of the bear market now. It's still surprising to me to see people on Twitter and on social, even just some of the conversations I hear on Twitter Spaces of people that still are like, is the Titanic going to sink? Right? Because the Titanic has had its nose down and its butt up in the air for like 15 months. And people are still like, oh my God, is it going to go down? It's like, no, it's not going to go down. Just calm down. Go take a hike. Don't put the picture on Instagram. Relax for 5 seconds. And it's going to be fine. I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of like, we also are doing a show now twice a week. So I think we also get drawn into these narratives, but drawn into these news cycles, I should say. But something that Naval Ravikant tweeted the other day, and it was like, there is no news, there's just narrative. And I guess I'm just kind of personally getting tired with everyone freaking out about whatever's going to happen. It's like, if you believe in this long term, put your money in it. And if you're not going to hold it, like Warren Buffett said, if you're not going to hold it for 10 minutes, if you're going to hold it for 10 years, you shouldn't buy it. And that's how I really feel about these assets.
Oh, absolutely. I think, are these narratives? Absolutely. Because June 1st or June 7th, whatever X date ends up being, is going to roll around, and we'll probably have a midnight deal or 11:59 deal, and the U.S. is going to raise their debt ceiling.
Yeah.
That's 90. I'm 98% sure that's the case. And so these are all just, what? We got really negative in this show, and normally we're not this negative.
It's not negative. I don't think we've been negative at all.
No, I don't
think it's negative at all.
I guess it's more fearful than we normally speak. And
Well, I don't think so, because
I don't think so either,
my
yeah.
question is, what's the mechanism? Because there's the difference between what's the mechanism in some predictive behaviors of if this then that, if this then that, and the reason I think we talk about it, maybe we do need to spend more time on this more positive component, and it's what Jarrett's getting at, and that is therefore, if this then that, if this then that, therefore, what's your strategy? I'm going to transcend, in Jarrett's case, I'm going to transcend and stick to my investment strategy. Long term, buy and hold, dollar cost average. And hey, if it dips, that's called buying opportunity. And, Grant, what's your call? Well, I mean, yes to dollar cost averaging. I'll probably dollar cost average a little more conservative. I am constantly hoping for a dip in the TradFi market. If this, then that. If this, then that. But either one means I'm going to buy in and look for a spread, because I ultimately believe that the market goes up, right? Like, I think, you guys have seen these charts in the public. I'm sure you've seen these charts where we've had so many recessions. And if you look at the chart of bear markets versus bull markets, like, we've had bull markets far outweigh bear markets, but bear markets get your blood pressure going, drives headlines. So I guess from a negativity standpoint, no, we talked about headlines and we did discuss the narrative, but I don't think what we didn't spend a lot of time on is, do we buy the narrative? And do we buy the narrative? I believe most people do, so therefore that's what will manifest. But what do I hope for you, the viewer? What do I hope for the three of us? I hope we transcend that shit.
oh, absolutely. See, there's a lot of things that Canada's been starting to screw up with crypto. But the one thing that I think has maybe gone well is that we're moving away from stablecoins. I can buy with Canadian dollars now, and just straight Canadian dollars. And so I could very easily, if there was a big dip in your good old regular markets, I can go buy with my Canadian dollars and go buy some good old Bitcoin and ETH. And I see these narratives and I like talking about them because it's kind of interesting, and the if then what scenarios are fun for my brain to work on. But I mean, yeah, I don't think they're necessarily big things. I don't really think that a lot of what we talked about is going to happen. I do see.
Also, yeah, your videos froze.
But your audio's fine.
But your
Okay.
audio's fine. So
Yeah. Interestingly, both of you have frozen for me at one point during the stream too. So
Sure.
good lord.
yeah, so we're all having some fun stream
Yeah.
things today. But I mean, yeah, I think we're gonna just transcend the trend. I want to ask you guys. We've talked about meme coins a few times on the show lately, and Grant, we've had a couple of discussions on some threads. Do you think meme coin season is dying? Has it peaked?
Interesting. Okay, I'll answer this. But Jarrett, did you have a final thought there you wanted to get across? You look like you were trying to give birth to a thought there for a second.
Yeah, Aussie had sent something, and then I can't remember, but I
Okay.
think it was along the lines of just like, I'm starting to see who's here for the long term and who's not.
Yeah.
And it's becoming really evident on Twitter, because every single day something happens and everyone freaks out. And I was explaining this to actually my therapist the other day, but the idea, the fable of the Chinese farmer who just says maybe to everything, because that's how I literally feel. I don't even watch mainstream news anymore, because it's every night. It's like, well, it's a breaking news. This is gonna change the world. It's like, dude, over 100-year period, people are only gonna remember a couple wars and assassinations. Everything else is just noise. There's some signal. And if Aussie's telling me that there's this USDT thing that backs everything, I did not know about this. This is good to learn. But here's my thought on this. My final thought.
Sure.
If that's how USDT is into the system, and if they start to depeg, and then the fear will build, and then people will sell, and the fear will build, people will sell, and then the fear becomes fact. Well, that's a weakness to the entire crypto system, which will eventually be weighted out. So what's going to happen in my head, what I would put money on, if that were to happen, the U.S. defaults on the debt, that starts to happen, the thing depegs, it throws off all these exchanges. Well, guess what? Brian Armstrong's super happy. He's like, God, let's get away from this USDT thing. We need to just find a better system. I guess what I'm starting to see in crypto in general, between people that are in crypto and with the projects, we're seeing digital Darwinism, right? The weak projects will eventually be rooted out. That's just how this happens. That's how technology works. 100 kids show up to the science fair, only one gets to win. And when I look at that science fair, there's like a couple coins that I just feel long-term have made the investment, have the community, are decentralized enough, are kind of sticking to the core tenets of Satoshi's white paper. Everything else is just noise. And I'm almost thinking I'm going to take like 30 days off Twitter eventually and just come back and be like, wow, nothing's changed. Everyone's still saying the same thing. Everyone still has the same fear. Everyone still needs to zoom out, start to memorize their cold storage wallet. And that's it. So that was
my So I'm feeling like to build towards answering Aussie's question of me about shitcoin season, meme coin season coming to an end. You ever stay when I was a teeny bopper? You ever stay
back when I was riding around?
Yeah, you ever stay at a club so long that it was like past last call and they flicked the lights on?
All the time, Grant. Even now as an adult.
I'm in Colombia, my favorite place. Yeah. And you don't want to be there at that hour because you could have been there for like 6 hours, partying your brains out, having a good time, connecting with people in the dark and mist of that place. They do last call and you're like, I'm going to linger and flirt and talk to people. And then the lights come up and reality is shown. Who's got blemishes, how nasty the floor actually is, how unsexy the bar actually is, how rank and dank the place truly is. And you're like, they are going to have to hose this place down for tomorrow. And it's suddenly disenchanting. Where crypto Twitter is, and building up to my answer to Aussie about shitcoin season, enough people are abandoning the space. So the weak-handed, and I'm not even going to call people paper hands at this point. Because people, they're not paper hands. People that have stuck around this long, give them credit where credit is due. Give people credit where credit is due. They've stuck around this long, and they've tried to play. But the narratives you're talking about, we are starting to see people trying to play other people's emotions. We are starting to see that only those who are remaining are trying to engagement farm and have very little meat on them bones. I was just convicted that, I love the fact that whether it was this show or whether it was our project, Just Alpha, or any of the other projects we've worked on, I love the fact that we've always been teetering with something. Because, sure, the therapist loved that discussion. Yes, yes, Allison.
Allison, you already know.
Yep, you already know. If you have a therapist, you know. So here's the point. I think the lights are being flicked on. And I think this last shitcoin season was beyond final call, folks. This crypto winter, believe me, it has not gotten as deep yet as it could have gotten, but it has lasted longer than anyone estimated. This has been the longest crypto winter I've been a part of. I've been here since 2011. I've sold way too low on my Bitcoin. I've been up, I've been down. I've seen crypto winners, man, but they have not lasted this long. And so God bless everyone who stuck around, but the people who are sticking are the people who are worthy. Allison is still here. George Pate is still here. Brian Naughton is still here. Jackie Roach is still here. All of these people that we
you're going to forget Roger?
Sorry, Roger. My bad. George Todorolo flew his butt to Singapore just to meet other people in the space. People are starting to gain my respect, not just because they're sticking with it. Because here's the thing. I learned this from entrepreneurship. You got to know when to cut bait. But here's the thing about this. The people that are sticking are not pretenders. By that I mean they're not necessarily king hotshot. The people that are sticking around are being honest. I don't know what's next, but I love this space. I might not have a big time project like some of these big shots who did all these ICOs and raised a ton of money or have VC money, but where are those people today? People that have raised money, where are they? I love that the intellectual class, the social justice class, the people who are still natively curious are still here. And so when the lights are flicked on, and you've been talking to somebody at the bar and they're not who you thought they were when the lights were off, and you're like, I want this conversation to end. I don't have that feeling about about all the people I just listed. I don't have that feeling. The lights flicked on, and it's time for us to go get drinks or go get something to eat on the way home together. Like, I like who we're with. And so I say all that to say, this is nowhere more evident than in shitcoin season. This was a particularly ridiculous. The PSYOP coin by Ben.eth was
It's still going. That's literally why I'm asking you about it, because
this
I think
is the worst. There are before the mint was done, there was a massive class action lawsuit about this guy rugging everyone before the mint was done. And he did it to your face. I'm calling it a PSYOP. He did it to your face, and if you got in, you deserve to be out of the market for a minute. Go to your corner. You're grounded. I
love it, Grant. Keep going.
So I think meme coin season ended weeks ago. Shitcoin season is like you are 5 drinks in and you're still drinking the shit vodka from the bottom of the barrel. Like, you deserve to go home and puke your guts out in the toilet a little bit. You're grounded. You're going to have a throbbing headache because the rest of us who are the sober drivers, we got to piece this shit back together.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I wanted to bring up PSYOP is bring up the end of shitcoin season is because of PSYOP, and not because I invest in PSYOP or anything like that.
Embarrassing.
But I think I was like, we had this discussion on Twitter, and I think some of our followers in the audience saw this, but there's always a top. There's always something where everyone jumps in, and then it goes nowhere. It either dumps from launch, it rugs, it's a nightmare. And then you kind of see a few last failed attempts for the rally, and it goes nowhere. And I feel like PSYOP was probably, at least in our corner of crypto Twitter, the thing that did it. Raised $7 million.
Raised $7 million, and it burnt a lot of people out. It was the last straw for a lot of people. It was I haven't seen anything that forward in terms of that bold-faced trash meme coin pulling money since Jade Protocol. I mean, it was that obvious to me. But I'm grateful that has happened. It was the Darwinianism. It was the degen Darwinianism. I wouldn't even call it digital. It was the degen Darwinianism. And I'm glad it's come to a close. And I'm glad to see that I've got peers that didn't invest and stuck it out. Now, I bought Pepe, right? I bought Gensler. I'm down for a good meme. But I got into it going, this shit is hilarious because it's going nowhere. But the people who were like, yay, PSYOP. What do you think, folks? Is it going to go? And they're like, you're just engagement farming, hoping to catch your own bump and find your own exit liquidity at your micro level. Shame on people. Shame on people. So it's over, and I'm glad it's over. Go ahead, Jarrett.
Grant, I love what you just said, and we need to clip that about meme coin and shitcoin season. We'll finish up soon because we're a little over time here. But
that's okay.
The thing I wanted to say was that I started watching BitBoy Crypto when he had like 200,000 subs, and he was awesome. He looked different. He had a whole different vibe. He was less I know. He was a little bit more curious. And now he is just like a completely different person. I don't even know who he is anymore. I mean, back then he used to have I remember when he bought a Mustang and had a Bitcoin on the side, and then somebody stole it from him. And now he's just totally in Lambo land. And there's that whole video of him. He was actually at NFT NYC, and we could have ran into him. And he was right up by, remember where that like Egyptian coin where they were doing all those raffles? There's a video of him famously because he's talking crap to the guy from one of the failed projects who stole a bunch of money. I can't think of the name. But anyways, he has like taught me lessons personally about how not to engage in this space. He has taught me lessons about how not to take money for not crypto bros, especially for like anything that you're creating on the internet. He has, he was totally getting people on FTX. I think he was getting people on crypto.com.
Yeah.
Not crypto.com, FTX, and maybe it was BlockFi. He was getting referrals for BlockFi and other, side things and swaps and stuff. And it's really showed me. And between he and Anthony Pompliano, who also had the best business show in the world, it was called The Best Business Show, and it was he and his 3 brothers, and they would sit around and talk about business. A phenomenal show. he also, Anthony Pompliano, also had some people who he was getting paid, and that company went belly up, and it hurt a bunch of people. And so he got put on the spit for a minute, and he walked away and said, I'm never taking any more funds from any of my shows. I'm not going to be sponsored by anyone, because once you get sponsored by someone, you tie yourself to whatever's going to happen to them and the ripple effects from whatever they do. Sure. And you can't control people. So anyways, it's just been very interesting to watch BitBoy Crypto, because I don't see a situation that by 2025, he's not on like an Alex Jones level of kind of eccentricism and just looking to say things just to get the clicks, not even because he thinks they're real. And it's kind of sad, because I do think he's actually very well versed in the space, and he's taken his own personal bag and brought it up to multi millions. He got a team of like 7 or 8 people. But I think it's just a really good thing for us as content creators to look at, and people who are trying to build name in the space. And Allison as well. Brian Naughton, he has, he's writing articles. Great Allison newsletter. Working with Meta Campus. Roger Williams honestly leading the global charge for me for Li-Fi. It's very good to look at people and learn those lessons too. Even people you don't agree with, you can definitely learn. You probably learn more lessons from. So it's been good to think about BitBoy Crypto in that sense. Yeah, man. Well, guys, I think it's that time. Shout outs. Aussie, what do you got?
You know what? I'm going to shout out everyone who's on DGen Crypto right now and who's realized PSYOP is dead, and now they're going to Bitcoin NFTs and ordinals and BRC20, because they're trying to grab that last glimmer of hope and see if they can maybe they can make their 100x. Yeah.
My shout out is to crypto therapists everywhere, because you're going to get phone calls when people have to have this sit down with their partner and be like, hey, if they meet their partner, the partner's like, what do you do for a living? They're like, I got to confess, I'm 50, I'm 100K in debt because of this thing called Pepe. And they're going to have to talk to their therapist about it. And the therapist is going to get the call and said, I've been married 15 years and I had to tell my wife I lost our trip to Sandals Resort because of Gensler or Jesus coin. I'm telling you, to the therapists out there who are going to be raking it in, but also basically sin eaters for shitcoin season. That's my shout out today. My shout out is to anyone who in the future is going to buy a shitcoin or a meme coin. Before you do it, go ahead and just DM me. And I'll tell you not to do it, and you'll feel better about yourself. We need to set up. This is how we're going to make money in this space. We're going to set up a 1-800 number. Yeah. And you pay me $100, and I save you $900 because you were about to buy $1,000. Should I buy it? At 1-800, should you buy it? And the 3 of us are going to take turns and be like, no, you fucking DJ. 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, 24-hour day coverage. Because there was that chick who's like an influencer. I don't know. She's OnlyFans or whatever. And she set up the AI so it would talk sexual things to you, and it would charge you $1 a minute. Yep. And she made like $76,000 in the first week. So we could just turn Not Crypto Bros into we'll just call it actual crypto therapists. And then people will just come on here. We'll just talk to them. And it's kind of like honestly, in 20 years, there's going to be a whole live show. We'll probably be in the metaverse where it's going to be like a Judge Judy thing, where you're going to bring on whoever, your roommate, your partner, your sister, your old lawyer, and you're going to argue about crypto, about money lost in crypto. Seriously.
Can we just start like crypto financial audit, basically become like Dave Ramsey and and like Caleb Hammer.
So I've got 16 million bonk, which I do. and it looks like, I'm kind of confused, Dave. It looks like it's only worth $7. What am I doing?
Yeah. So Dave, what's your opinion? What should I do with it? Because I just want to take my wife down to Cabo for a week.
Well, first off, are you a dumbass?
Well, first off, make sure you don't use credit cards.
Yeah. I think that's the show, folks. If you're looking for us, find us at notcryptobros.
It's the best show, and Aussie can't even breathe. He's just sweating.
It's notcryptobros.xyz. Visit us Friday at the Friday Free For All, which I guarantee to be wearing a cowboy hat. But check us out. Subscribe, share with a friend, and let us know how we can be better for you. We appreciate you. We love your time together, for spending this hour with us. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.